Okay, so we've started recording. Welcome everybody to our 237th Writing Online Sports Economics Seminar. It is a great pleasure that we've got Ziangnan Zeng and co-author Claire Dunacqua both here for the presentation, Short Run Retaliation, Long Run Updating Black Leadership and Racial Animus. Just before Ziangnan takes away the talk, just to say we are sponsored by the Sports Economics Review and of course hosted by the University of Reading. In the reminder email, if you got it, if you didn't get it and you're not in the team, let me know. I'm happy to add you to the team. In the reminder email, you will have seen the schedule for the coming weeks. We'll have one more talk before August and no talks throughout August for a variety of reasons, not least I'm taking a couple of holidays, which I'm looking forward to. But we're back in September and there are slots available in September the 4th, 18th, 25th, and then slots into October and November if you want to present and if you want to encourage colleagues to present as well. Everyone is always welcome. Jayon is happy to take questions as she goes along, so do raise your hand and hopefully she'll be able to see. And without any more delay, please do go ahead with your talk.
Okay, thank you, James. Hi, everyone, I'm Ziangnan. Thanks for incorporating this paper to this super cool seminar. And this is a working paper co-authored with Claire from University of Pittsburgh, and I'm from University of Guelph in Canada. So this paper is motivated with this very general research question: what shapes racial prejudice and under what conditions does it change? And as we all know, racial prejudice is persistent and consequential across different settings. And most of the existing work typically studies one-directional forces. Either they are works about how external shocks increase the racial hostility, or they are papers studying the interventions that could reduce prejudice. However, comparing to that, less is known about the settings where minority leaders are repeatedly and publicly tied to both success and failure. And we can see this kind of situations also in all kinds of settings, right? For example, the success of these minority leaders may reduce the stereotypes and shift the norms. On the other hand, also the same person, their failure may activate racial blame. So we are interested in this kind of very common scenarios, and it turns out sports provides a really good opportunity to study this kind of thing. Because as we all know, sports is highly visible, media saturated, and also there are a lot of minority athletes in leadership roles, and they are repeatedly evaluated. So they face public praise, judgment, and also blame at the same time. So to study this question in this paper, we focus on American football, which is a big deal in North America. So definitely American football is a mass media event. The Super Bowl is consistently the most viewed event in US TV, and even regular season games are highly watched. And we can say American football is not just the sport, but also a major part of American culture. It's closely tied to the national and also local identity. And within this particular institution, one position stands out, which is the quarterback position. And the quarterback position was viewed as the face of the franchise, the most important position in football, because the quarterback received the balls at the start of the most plays, make rapid decisions under pressure, and implement the team's strategy. So this position was widely regarded as a high IQ role and carries deep symbolic associations with leadership and masculinity in American culture. So naturally, this is the position that received the most media attention, of course, advertising opportunities, and definitely being viewed as symbols of leadership, excellence, and success. On the other hand, historically, quarterback was a highly racialized position because, as you may also already know, for decades, Black athletes were excluded from playing this particular position due to racist stereotypes questioning their intelligence, leadership, and decision-making ability. For example, it is until 1953, we have the first Black quarterback playing in NFL, and it is until 1968, we have the first starting Black quarterback in modern era. So that's why even till today, if you look at all the positions in NFL, you can see more than 60% of them are Black. But when it comes to quarterback position, only 20% of them are Black. And you can see this trend only increase, like the share of Black quarterback only increases until very recent. So basically this history of exclusion make Black quarterbacks a very salient racialized focal point on field. So here's a quote by a sports journalist on a famous Black quarterback, Hall of Famer Warren Moon. If the team won and Moon played well, he was the Oilers quarterback. If Moon played poorly and Houston lost, he was its Black quarterback, or worse, much worse. And we can see this kind of thing going on in all kinds of sports, right? So the main research question in this paper is, first, how does exposure to minority athletes in leadership position shape racial animus? And do these impacts depend on their success or failure? And then how do short-run reactions compare to longer-run changes as individuals may update their belief and social norm in the long run? So we are answering all these three questions. So in this paper, we study the dynamics of racial animus when the visible minority leaders are repeatedly evaluated. And to measure racial bias, we apply multiple measures, ranging from the hard outcomes, the hate crimes, to expressive indicators like hate speech on social media, racial slur, Google searches, and also implicit bias indices from the survey data. And we study both the short-run effect, which is how people react just 2 days before and after the game, and also the long-run effect, which is how people respond during the whole season and even until after the season. And what we find here is kind of interesting. In the short run, we basically find a racial retaliation effect. We find the hate crimes rises after emotionally engaging losses related to a Black quarterback. But the hate crimes doesn't change after winning related to Black quarterback. So this effect is very asymmetric. However, in the long run, we do find that when the Black quarterback team performed really well, reached the championship level, hate crime does fall, and this effect persists after the seasons. And all our other measures like hate speech, implicit biases, they all follow the same pattern as hate crimes. Okay, so our paper contributes to several branches of literatures. Remember, we find this asymmetric impacts on winning versus losing. So actually, this results contributes to literature about attribution asymmetry and racial spillovers. Basically, we provide the real-world evidence that this asymmetric affects animus towards an entire racial group. And then we contribute to this huge literature about contact theory, role models, and parasocial exposure. Well, most of the papers, like the role model papers, they study how minority role model or female role model inspire minority and female groups. Relatively, there's little about how media exposure to role models could reduce prejudice of the majority group. So we are contributing to that. And of course, there are several papers meaningful in political science and social psychology. They study the effect of a single role model, like President Obama and the Mossad effect. And they find these single celebrities could reduce prejudice. So particularly this paper by Salman Musa here they are closely related to our paper. They find that after the arrival of Mo Salah to Liverpool, the anti-Muslim hate crime significantly declined. So based on this literature, we connect racialized blame with performance contingent updating. And we show that visible Black leadership can both activate and reduce animus. And of course, it depends on their performance, and also it depends on the time horizon. And lastly, we contribute to papers about how sporting events and emotional shocks lead to all kinds of social consequences. And this paper provides the first causal evidence that NFL, the most visible non-political institutions in the US, can shape racial animus and social cohesion within the states. Okay. So before I introduce our results, I would like to use this very small toy model to to be helpful to guide our results later. So basically in this model, the expected racial animus in area A on day D and for game G consists of two major parts. One is the baseline animus, this term, which is a slow-moving racial animus in area A and season S. And the second term is this short-run game day shock, which is the short-run deviation around game G on day D. And in our empirical analysis, these observed hateful outcomes like hate crimes, hate speech, they are increased with this racial animus. And in summary, our main predictions in our model is, in the short run, affect shocks associated with the salient outgroup members, which is the Black quarterback in our context, will trigger retaliatory racial animus towards the general outgroup bystanders. However, in the long run, due to the repeated media exposure to the outgroup members, people will gradually shift their prejudice towards the general outgroup bystanders. So specifically for the short run, we basically model it in two steps. The first step is a game creates emotional shocks, which is captured by this affect shocks. And if the shock is attributed to the Black quarterback, it can spill over into racial animus. So these two equations capture the two steps. In equation 1, you can see this affect shocks created emotional shock created by the game depends on how engaging the local fans to the team. And also it depends on how intense the game is. And then because of the racialized focal point presence of the Black quarterback, the people will attribute the affect to the Black quarterback and further generate racial animus during this process. So our game day predictions will be this racial animus will vary based on winning or losing of the local team. If the local team winning game, that will reduce racial animus, and if the local team lost the game, that will increase the racial animus. And the magnitude of this racial animus will rise based on with the how engaging the local fans are, and also how intense the games are. And also this attribution to Black quarterbacks might be asymmetric in terms of winning or losing. So those are our model predictions. And we are going to use empirical analysis to test whether those are true or not. And for our season mechanism, basically over a season, the repeated exposure to Black quarterback can update the baseline animus, which is here. And the direction depends on their performance signal. The R is their performance, and the theta L will be the signal related to the performance of the Black quarterback. And here we test this separately for local Black quarterback versus opposing Black quarterback. So for local Black quarterback, it's quite obvious. Our prediction will be if the local black quarterback performs better, the team has better records, that will make the signal more positive, and that will reduce the baseline racial animus. However, for opposing black quarterback, because the exposure to opposing black quarterback throughout the whole season is much less direct, so the sign of updating is quite ambiguous. So we need to use empirical analysis to actually know what is the sign of updating, what's going on with the opposing black quarterbacks here. Okay, are there any questions so far? Okay, so let me talk about our data. So we use multiple measures for racial bias. Our hate crime data comes from the FBI's UCR data from 2002 to 2024. Our implicit racial bias measures comes from this implicit association task scores hosted by Project Implicit. Basically, this is a psychological test designed to measure people's implicit biases. So they do not explicitly ask what's your racial attitudes. They require the respondents to do some rapid sorting exercise to measure their implicit biases. Our hate speech data comes from the Reddit NFL team subreddits from 2015 to 2024. Our main measure in the analysis is share of submissions being removed by moderation due to hate crimes, due to hate speech. So, and for those that are still observable, we use these two large language models to calculate a score for anti-Black hate speech. And lastly, we also use the racial animosity indexes built from the Google Trends indexes for searches of racial slurs at DMA level. This is also a commonly used racial animosity index by all these kind of literatures. And to measure the impact of Black quarterbacks, we need to construct this geographic fan base map. And how do we construct it? We basically calculate the ratings for each team across all the DMAs. We combine the average reported ratings in a team's local DMA, and then we combine it with the Google Trend interest indexes for each team across all the DMAs. And so we multiply these two together, and then each DMA are matched to their highest rated team. Okay. And for our quarterback data, we collected this NFL play-by-play game data and the player data using public APIs for 2002 to 2024 seasons. And we had our TAs help to identify the race of all the quarterbacks. So in total we have 5,000 games. And basically, we only use games that are at least 7 days after the prior game and at least 3 days before the next, because we want to have a clean time window for our event study analysis. And also because 85% of games occur on Sundays, so we just basically focus on these games on Sundays. And then we identify the team win if this team win game, and then 0 if they lose or tie. Of course, tie is very rare in our sample. And then in terms of the quarterbacks, we focus on all the white and Black quarterback. And then we basically compare games with one Black quarterback playing against one white quarterback to the games that played by both white quarterbacks. And to measure how intense the games are, we further categorize games as close games and upset games. So a close game will be if the score differential is smaller and equal to 7 points, And the upset games will be if the pregame spread predicted opposite outcome by larger than 3 points. And then for our season level analysis, we basically compare teams with a black quarterback versus a teams with white quarterback. A team is identified with having a black quarterback throughout the season if majority of the games are played by the black quarterback. And then we further rank the team's performance to 3 groups. So we basically rank them as the teams that didn't make into the playoff, and the teams that make into the playoff but didn't make into the conference championship, and then the teams that make into the conference championships. So in total, every year there are 4 teams making into the championship level. Okay. So let's talk about our game day analysis, the short run analysis. So basically, we apply a triple difference and event steady analysis. Basically, we apply a 5-day time window around each game. So we compare 2 days before and after each game, and then we compare this time differences between the games that are played by 1 black quarterback and 1 white quarterback, and versus the games played by both white quarterback. And then we further interacted with whether local team win or lost the game. And we control for the location by game fixed effects to basically this fixed effects trying to absorb baseline racial animus and the cause of hateful behavior specific to this specific area, and also during this game time window. And we also control for the day of the week, whether it is the day of the week. Yeah. And so basically this row 2 gives us an estimate that is the differential change after a game played by black quarterback compared to white quarterback, and the local team lost the game. And this, after we add this row 2 and row 4 together, this estimates give us, after the winning related to the black quarterback, what is the differential change for local team comparing to games played by both white quarterbacks. Okay, so here's our results for anti-black hate crimes. So here our outcome measure is the anti-black hate crimes per 10 million at DMA level. And you can see if we look at all the games, and we don't see much going on after white games. However, when there's a loss associated with black quarterback, we see hate crime increases by 18%. However, we don't see much going on after winning associated with black quarterback. Yeah, so and then if we focus on all the emotional engaging games, the intense games that are both close and upset, you can find the magnitude is even larger. Or you can say all the main results in column 1 are actually driven by those emotional games. For close and upset games, the hate crime rate is 43% higher after losses associated with black quarterback. And similarly, we do not find significant results after winning associated with black quarterback. So this effect is very asymmetric. And here is the event study graphs for the close and upset games. On the right-hand side, we plot the hate crimes changes for white quarterback games, like 2 days before and after. And on the left-hand side, the blue graph shows the differential effect for games played associated with black quarterback. And this dashed line represents the losses associated with black quarterback. You can see the hate crimes increases starting from the game day and persists until the second day of the game. On the other hand, the blue line here, this one shows the estimates after winning associated with black quarterback, and it doesn't change much. Okay, and interesting, we find for the games that are not close and not upset, we basically find nothing going on there. So unemotional games have little impact. And here you can see we basically measures the effect based on whether the team win or lost the game. So what we did next is we want to see whether the individual performance of quarterbacks actually have a differential impact throughout this. And what we find is that all these effects still persist after controlling for the quarterback's individual performance. Even so, for example, if the quarterback performs very well, but the team finally lost the game, the same effect. Here we use the EPA per game as a measure for the individual quarterback's performance for each game. Okay, and then here's the results with the hate speech, which is measured with the share of submissions being removed due to hate speech moderation. And interestingly, we find the results are mainly driven by the close and upset games. You can see the hate speech increases by 29% after losses associated with black quarterback, and we don't see much going on for the winning associated with black quarterback, which is also showed in this graph. This dash line increases after starting from the game day, but this solid line doesn't change much. And interestingly, we find that the effects are attenuated after we control for the black quarterback's individual performance level, which means on Reddit, on these NFL team subreddits, people actually can recognize the individual performance of the players comparing to the general public. Okay, and here's the results with the implicit association test, the implicit racial bias. And similarly, we also find these results are mainly driven by the close and upset games. And you can find the IIT score is 0.043 standards higher after close and upset losses. Okay, so all these above results are robust to other measures for the anti-Black hate crimes and also different combination of the fixed effects. And we find our hate crime results are mainly driven by the crimes against the persons and property, which is the most common hate crime. And also the results are driven by the crimes committed by a single or unknown number of perpetrators. For example, someone left racist slogan or something like that in front of yard, and you don't know who did that. That's this kind of crimes. And we didn't find any evidence in hate crimes against other racial groups. And although we conduct heterogeneity analysis based on the local white-black exposure index, a measure for exposure and segregation, and also we conduct heterogeneity analysis based on local racial animosity level. And for both measures, we didn't find any differential impact. And based on our model predictions, we say if this effect will be increasing based on how people are how close people are tied to the local team. So here those are the two graphs. For the effects by quartile of DMA level team engagement, so from low to high. So basically, you can see for both especially for hate crimes and also for we see larger effects in DMAs that are more engaged with their local team. Okay. So what we did above is we pulled the games that played between black quarterbacks versus white quarterbacks altogether, no matter the black quarterback represents the local team or opposing team. So here we test whether the effects are different if we look at whether they vary based on whether the black quarterback represents the local team or opposing team. So what really surprises us is that no matter the black quarterback played for the local team or opposing team, when there is a losses by the local team, it always increases racial bias, no matter which team they represent. And also when there's a win played by no matter local team black quarterback or the opposing team black quarterback, it's always nothing going on there. So basically, we can say that racial animus increases after engaging losses involving any black quarterback, no matter which team they represent. And of course, you can use different mechanisms to explain each of these results, but we think all these patterns are only consistent with one explanation, which is this is an emotion-driven racial retaliation effect. Okay, so that's all with about our game short run analysis. And then as you can see, the short run analysis are heavily driven by affect shocks. And of course, they are very temporary. It's only 2 days after the game. And so people are also curious about what about the cumulative effects of repeated exposure as what Mo Salah paper does. So we first look at the season effects of local black quarterback. And similarly, we also use this triple diff analysis. And basically, we track the evolution of the racial bias across the whole season and also several months after the season. And then we compare the teams played by black quarterback versus the teams played by white quarterback. And we further differentially test this effect by the team's performance, whether they make into the playoff, if they make into the playoff, whether they make into the championship. And also we control for a bunch of fixed effects. For example, the area by season fixed effects can help us to control for outcome evolution in the specific area A over time. And this area by month fixed effects controls for a specific seasonality. And the performance month fixed effect controls for the record-induced seasonality. And the season by month fixed effect controls for the national time trend. And we also got questions about what if this local team choose to have a black quarterback in response to the local trend of racial bias. For example, is it possible that Dallas choose to have a black quarterback because during the past years, they have a decreasing racial bias trend. So we explicitly test that. So basically, we regress whether the team has a black quarterback on the standard change in hate crimes from season -2 to season -1, and we didn't find anything here. Okay. And here is the event study graph for the anti-black hate crimes. So as you can see, the season starts in September and ends in February. So this estimates gives us like the postseason results. And our baseline will be the 2 months just before the season starts, July to August. And this black line represents all the differential estimates for all the teams played by black quarterback comparing to all the teams played by white quarterback. And you can see nothing happened for all the teams. And then the blue line represents the black quarterback teams that didn't make it into the playoff. And also we didn't find much going on there. But for the red line, which is all the championship level black quarterback teams, you can see there's a significant decline in hate crimes for those areas when the black quarterback teams make it into the championship level. And also we find similar patterns with Google searches of racial slurs and IET score. So for the blue line, which is the teams that didn't make into the playoff, interestingly, we do see 2.5% increase in racial slur Google search for those Black quarterback teams that didn't make into playoff, but nothing going on with the IET score. But for the red line, which is the championship level Black quarterback teams, we see consistent decline for both measures. And then for the hate speech measure, which is the share of submissions being removed on Reddit, we didn't see anything going on there. We do find that the variation in hate speech on the posts of Reddit is very temporary. It's very seasonal. Basically, after the season, there's almost no discussions, and so maybe that's why throughout the season we didn't find anything. And also we did this analysis by the engagement quartile, and basically you can see for the championship level quarterback effects, the magnitude of this effect is increasing based on the engagement level of the local fans to the team. The magnitude is larger for the more engaging areas for all three measures of racial bias. Okay. Yeah, we did the similar robustness test with anti-Black hate crimes and different combination of fixed effects. And interestingly, we find this seasonal results is mainly driven by the most common hate crimes and type of hate crimes, and it is mainly driven by multi-perpetrator crimes, which suggests the socially coordinated hate is reduced for this championship level Black quarterback area. And we also find no evidence in hate crimes targeting other groups like white or other racial groups. And for our season level analysis, because every year there are only 32 teams, so it is possible that this result is driven by certain teams or certain Black quarterback. So we conduct this leave one out test, which is we doing the same estimation, just omitting all observations for a specific team or all observations tied to a particular Black quarterback. And so basically each triangle represents the results that after we omit one team, and then each circle here represents the results after we omit one single Black quarterback. And you can see the result, basically all these leave one out analysis estimates are around the average of our estimation. So those are not driven by one single team or one single Black quarterback. And we also did similar heterogeneity analysis by the exposure level and the racial bias level, and we didn't find any significant differential impact. Okay. And what happens to teams that play against Black quarterback in the long run? Still the similar empirical structure, but here we are thinking about how to measure the exposure to opposition Black quarterback throughout the season. So here we tried two measures. One is the total number of regular season games played against opposition Black quarterback. And the second measure is whether your white quarterback team is knocked out by a Black quarterback team. So that the second one is the dummy. And however, we basically find no and very noisy effect for the exposure to opposition Black quarterback. This is the first measure. This is the second measure. We didn't find much going on under the exposure of opposition Black quarterbacks. Okay, And lastly, we conduct the same analysis with a different subject, the black head coach, because a head coach is also the leader of the team. Of course, they contribute a lot to the team's performance. So we want to see whether we have the same results with the black head coach. So we apply the same analysis, same specification. And as you can see, for short run, we didn't see anything going on with hate crimes, hate speech, IAT in terms of having black coaches associated with win or loss. And similarly for season level analysis, we didn't find anything. So what this analysis tells us is leadership alone is not sufficient to generate the short run or long run effects. The difference between black quarterback and black head coach underscores the role of media in shaping when minority leadership influence public attitudes. So we need both leadership and also the media exposure to generate this kind of racial animus changes towards a broader group. Okay. Yeah, so I can conclude here. So in this paper, we study how racial animus responds to minority leadership, focusing on black quarterbacks in NFL. And in the short run, we find that all of our hateful measures increases after engaging losses associated with black quarterback, and we find little effect after engaging wins associated with black quarterback. And it doesn't matter the black quarterback represents the local team or opposing team. So this results basically consistent with an affect-driven racialized retaliation reaction. However, in the long run, when the local black quarterback performs exceptionally well, that actually reduces racial animus. And this effect can persist even till the 2 months after the season. But we find no evidence of that playing against opposing black quarterback team. Yeah, that's all about our paper. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you very much, Jiangnan. I am going to give you a team's round of applause and a couple of others there. Thank you for a really interesting
Thank you.
presentation. I really enjoyed that. And we've got lots of time for questions and comments. Steve has his hand up, so Steve, go ahead.
Thanks a lot for that talk. It was really quite interesting. I wonder if there is any data that you got out of the hate crimes to observe whether these are in any way predictable and therefore potentially preventable by law enforcement or civic groups, based on the nature of the hate crimes and what happens, or if this is just, people have to be on alert and it's just random kind of crimes. And related to that topic, if you are thinking about taking the paper any further than just publishing it academically, you might talk about or tie it into, I know there's a lot of data work, I don't know if it's by economists or what the discipline is, about the increase in domestic abuse after major sporting events. In fact, there was a story in the Times of London just the other day about the increase in domestic abuse after the World Cup. And with the idea is that is there any way groups can act to mitigate the effects that you've observed?
I think for your second question, there is a paper by David Card studying American football's impact on domestic violence. And yeah, they do find a significant effect. And for the first question, so you are saying we can further categorize the hate crimes based on those that can be preventive and those cannot be preventive. I mean, Claire, what do you think?
I just it's interesting because I think like, yeah, how do you get this to policy makers or groups that could actually actively try and mitigate this? I don't know. I am in contact with like the NFL Players Union, and so we'll present some of these results to them as well. It's just I think so we're focused on hate crimes because we're really, but like I think it's true that after a lot of sporting events, crime in general goes up, whether it's hate or like female oriented, like domestic violence crime. A lot of papers have documented kind of increases in crime particularly after these like highly emotional, intense games. And like I think I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that the police are aware that these things happen after games. Now, whether there's an awareness of like this kind of almost triple difference of like the race of the players and hate crimes in particular, I think that's kind of our novel contribution, and that we could try and communicate that in particular. But yeah,
maybe those multiple perpetrator crimes can be somehow preventive, but the unknown number of perpetrator is hard.
Yeah. A lot of the I think there's a lot of property crime, a lot of graffiti kind of stuff going on. Things like that are getting categorized in these buckets, and I think it's just really difficult to stop those particular things from happening. Yeah. Other than a broader cultural shift. Yeah. Which is kind of what we're seeing with the seasonal effects, I think. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Ziangnan and Claire. We've got Danielle next.
Yeah, hi, super interesting. I have a lot of comments. I'm going to try to keep them short, and maybe I'll send you some additional things by email. I thought the most interesting and surprising, fact to me was that there's no difference between the local and opposition quarterback, and it's surprising, right? I don't have a good story where you're finding so similar effects, and I'm trying to tell, well, my team plays Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson beats us with a phenomenal performance. Now I get really angry at blacks, but if I'm a Baltimore fan, Baltimore Ravens fan, and Lamar Jackson doesn't play well, I also get mad at blacks in the same way. And that seems like they seem very different channels. One thing that I was wondering whether you could sort of interact that with sort of quarterback rating or other measures of did the black quarterback really sort of was he exceptional in some way? And I don't know, I thought that was just I would sort of emphasize that more and try to sort of to dig more into that particular result. One I have a lot of questions about the data, but one quick question is what kind of sample sizes do you have for the IAT? I'm surprised that you would have enough granularity to say, oh, there's an NFL game, let's go and do an IAT. And so at the local level, you're going to have like a lot of sort of, enough power to identify those regressions. So again, that was, also a little bit surprising. And I really like sort of the Reddit sort of, what your measure is, like suspended posts, like canceled posts. I thought that was really creative, and there actually I'm not surprised that you get a lot of sample sizes around games that in the comments people get mad and use sort of hate language, and I thought that was that's a really nice way of using that. I'll send sort of further comments maybe by email later.
Yeah, thank you. I think we were also somewhat surprised by the local and opposition effect, like being pretty much similar. It's not necessarily what we kind of came in thinking. The way we've thought about it is just that you're very upset and you're looking for someone to blame, and if you're upset at you could be upset, your local quarterback didn't deliver, you're going to blame them. Which is kind of, if you look at those quotes about like the Warren Moon quote, like that's basically what he's expressing is like if he didn't do well or if the team lost, then the local fans would turn on you even though you're representing them. So at first I think we also were like, oh, this is weird that they're getting the same effect, but after digesting a bit more, I think it actually like seems to be this kind of response, this like emotional blaming mechanism that you see another kind of that I guess the kind of the asymmetry literature on how like employers will blame minority groups differentially than in groups, right? That there's this negative kind of asymmetry in how people get blamed in particular for poor performance that I think is somewhat consistent with what we're seeing there too.
What happens in, I mean, you probably have enough of a sample of like, black versus black quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. So it gets kind of noisy in that sample because it's about 20% of the games or 20% of the quarterbacks are black, and so it ends up there's a sample there, but it gets kind of noisy. So I think, do we have it in the appendix? I can't remember if we have. Our main sample is really just focused on this simple contrast, but of like games where the two white quarterbacks and one white versus black, just because it allows us to really kind of think a little bit more about those distinctions. But I think I can't remember. I think they get kind of noisy, which is why we're not presenting them.
So that leads me to my last comment, which is contradiction to the previous ones. There's a lot of stuff in this paper and a lot of robustness checks and a lot of like buttons that you didn't press. And I think that probably for publication, you may want to sort of skim it down and and focus on the most important thing. So ignore all the comments that I just said. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for your comments. And about the IAT data set is huge actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it's been online since I think I'm gonna say 2012. Is that right? Or maybe even earlier.
2003. It started in 2003.
Yeah, and it's like available to anybody. So there is kind of a question of like who is taking these IAT tests. It's not an experiment, right? It's like an online platform where anybody can log in and take a test. So we did a bunch of robustness to check and see like, is there changes and who's logging in and so forth, which we don't find. But essentially it's a platform where people can go and take these tests and they do a survey, and over the years they've just collected these millions of observations of people's survey responses. It's a platform that's often used, I think, in a lot of like college courses or like training courses where people are talking about bias and training people about bias, and so teachers and professors will assign students to go online and take a test, for instance. So it's a very large data set.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I've probably done that myself.
Yeah, and I want to add one thing that we did interacted with the individual performance of the quarterback for local quarterback and also the opposing quarterback. And you can see for the hate crime and the IAT score, which you are looking at a general public, it doesn't actually change the results much. It is only different for the Reddit users that they actually can recognize the performance of the quarterback. So
I think it's very consistent with like these very involved people who are on the NFL Reddit posts, and like they actually can see like, is the quarterback to blame or not? And then you see kind of these differential patterns there, but not so much in kind of the more general population measures.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for your answers. I'll send some additional comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Daniele. And then next is Pete.
Really enjoyed your paper. I think it's very important. I do think you're underselling one of your results. After all, you essentially have the population and what's going on, and you tell me that it's statistically insignificant that when a black quarterback has a win, it's meaningless. But it is not really meaningless because the magnitude was, I think, about 10% less hate crimes. And so it actually kind of reinforces your main result. And I understand we get lost in this world of statistical significance, but when you have the population, you should probably spend some time talking about the magnitudes when they're big like that. I can't remember. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, you're right. Like we always like worry about, but you're correct. I think there are some results where we're like not pushing them too much because they're not like statistically robust, but are pointing in directions that are, I think, important. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Maybe it's a footnote,
Yeah.
but I think that we ignore things that are meaningful sometimes.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Sebastian is next.
Thank you so much for these interesting presentations. And I thought, have you taken into consideration also fantasy football games and choices of the players? Have you decided to choose more often, for example, black quarterbacks or other ones?
So I think there are some papers who look, so this paper has a lot of outcomes already, and so we've been trying to really focus on kind of population level outcomes for racial animus as opposed to kind of bias towards the players, which I think there are. I believe there's a paper that looks a little bit, or at least maybe in soccer, that has kind of looked at kind of impacts of differential preference of people putting players on their teams. And so I think there is some work in that space. We've been, I think, generally trying to focus on kind of animus impacts in the broader population. But I think there's definitely interesting stuff to do in that space. And I'm not sure if the paper I'm thinking about looks at soccer or football. I forget off the top of my head, but I think there is some work in using kind of that idea. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting. And I hope that you will continue your research in other areas.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sebastian. There's definitely papers on soccer. Alex Price and Battista Severgnini have authored at least a couple of papers that I'm aware of looking at that. Yeah.
There's definitely a literature looking at that I'm sure your group is aware of that looks at kind of discrimination in player choice and how players are used and so forth, right? So that's all kind of cited in our paper. We're trying to keep this kind of focused on like the animus towards like off-field animus, I guess is what you'd call it. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Clay is next.
Yeah, so I really like this paper. I love emotional cue papers, and this is sort of what we've got here, like an emotional cue kind of story. The interesting result is that split, why you're getting similar results between local and non-local. You may want to dig into this further when you're looking at an opposing black quarterback, whether the team is in the same division as the local team. Because that could be this argument whether you have a familiar opponent versus an unfamiliar opponent. For the people who don't know NFL, divisional opponents play twice a year. Everybody else not so often, so that could be part of the story. And also, I know this is going to cut your sample by a ton, but have you looked at like when there is a new quarterback to the local team, whether white or black? Because I'm thinking of like the Mohamed Salah effect, which like the big effect was when Salah arrived to Liverpool. So a lot of these teams have the same quarterback year over year over year, maybe for decades. Does that change? Tell part of the story when there's a new quarterback taking over? Maybe that could be part of the results. And one last thing, your map of local teams is pretty good, but I think there's a couple of corners where I think an NFL fan may have some quibbles with. Like I think you said, like the top team in New Hampshire is the Seattle Seahawks. I think an NFL fan may have some quibbles with that. There is a recent publication by Arneson and Matsuzawa in RESAT, which uses a slightly different metric. So you may want to just see if your results are robust to that. I don't think it's going to change anything, but who knows?
Thank you. Those are all good suggestions. I think we've talked, I can't remember, we've talked about doing a couple of the things you suggested. I can't remember if we did them and they were under power, or if it's just like was on the to-do list and never got.
I think we identify whether this is a rivalry team, like whether like by how many times they met during the season. And
I can't remember what.
Yeah, we didn't find much going on there. So that's what, that's what we did. Yeah.
And I agree. There's like a lot of different ways to build this map. This is kind of what we settled on in terms of kind of trying to get a measure of interest. But I think we could run some of the other maps that are out there, and it would. I don't think it would change everything a whole lot. But yeah.
Thanks, Clay. And then back to Steve.
Sorry to impose on you as victims of an ongoing issue I've had as a consumer of economics. I'm a law professor with everybody else here, but I'd like to pick up on the I think it was Pete's comment on a finding that he found to be interesting and verbally significant that was not statistically significant.
Yeah.
So as I understand it, and I'm going to be taking a remedial math course next May from a Berkeley trained economist. But as I understand it, that means that you are not, in lay terms, 95% certain that the results are really telling you what you want to do. And that is not the standard that most people use in ordinary life to think about anything. So I wonder if you can not only highlight this, and whether you can do it in an econ publication, I don't know, but also share, well, how likely is it? Is the finding complete junk that is no more likely to be true or not, or the standard that at least lawyers use, is it more likely than not that hate crimes decrease when you have a successful quarterback? It may not be 95% likely, but could it be 50.1% likely? And are there statistical tools that would allow you to say that? And if the answer is yes, I would encourage you to say it.
Yeah, I mean, there are statistical tools. So for those drops after games where the quarterback wins, we could. It's basically what we call the p-value. Put a percentage number on like whether or not that drop, like kind of what range of drops are plausible, essentially. So that's certainly something we can do. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Steve. And Pete, back to Pete.
I'm sorry, but that really wasn't my point. My point is, and this is just my pet peeve, we in sports economics live in a world of populations, and we treat them all the time as if they were samples. And to make them samples, we have to kind of do a lot of backbending, talking about superpopulations and things like that. And my point is, if we have the population and we find a meaningful result, I guess that's what economically significant results, that should not be ignored, because we live in a world with populations. And I understand to publish, you have to live in a statistical world, but I think that's one of our faults as a sports economist.
I agree.
So I apologize.
I agree as well.
Thank you so much for
apologize,
letting me
Pete.
vent.
No need to apologize. Thank you, Pete. Any more questions and comments? I may have missed it because yeah, I may have missed it. Also, yeah, I think it was almost referred to in a question. Do you have any kind of performance data on these players? You know, can it be that the team loses but the quarterback plays fantastically, or does that not happen in American football? I'm just not even.
Yeah, we have that. We have looked at that, and that's where we see that for the kind of general population measures like hate crimes and IAT scores, we don't see that changing the reaction. But on Reddit, where these Reddit fans are very involved and actually understand how well the quarterback did, we do see that mitigating the reaction. So if the team loses, but the black quarterback played exceptionally well, that reduces the impact. Yeah.
Yeah.
On Reddit. Yeah. And I think it's just because of knowledge of the population that's kind of taking the action in a sense.
Yeah. And I wondered, you mentioned ties. I didn't think ties existed in American football. I assume there was a way in which ties are resolved and one team wins.
There's 14 ties in the entire data set out of 5,000 games. So it's a really rare event in American football.
Because this is what we always have to apologize about for our football, right? Is that, you know, it's different from these American sports when there's no tied outcome. So that's really interesting. And you mentioned engagement, and I wondered how that was measured. You may have covered it, but I just might have missed that bit.
It was.
So we're basically using the Google search indexes. So it's kind of the same as what we're using to build the map, which is for every media market, we look at over this period how frequently they're Googling team names, essentially. And so we're using that index to figure out, you know, for a population in a media market, like which teams are they kind of connected to, and we map them essentially to the team they're most connected to. But obviously for some kind of places that are in between two different places, they're Googling two teams, you know, so some places that connection is relatively tenuous because they are also looking at other teams and it's very far away, and other areas it's very strong because it's like right in your local area. So we're essentially using the Google indexes to get combined with kind of the general interest in the team, which is kind of the local rating. So we're using those things to create this metric of kind of ratings essentially. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much. Any more questions and comments?
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for presenting. Really, really interesting work. Wish you both all the best as you develop the work further. And obviously, as said, if you have other work you want to present in this forum, and please do let me know. And if you want to share the forum's assistance with colleagues, that would be fantastic. So thank you very much, Ziangnan and Claire. Thank you everyone for attending. We have one more session. So Pete, you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, is this working paper up somewhere where we could download it?
It's on our websites.
Okay, thanks. That's all I need.
Super. So do head to the websites and pick that up. We'll have one more session before breaking for August, and that is going to be Dmitry Dagayev next week. Promotion and licensing rules in leagues. Do they generate incentive incompatibility? So I wish you all a fantastic weekend and look forward to seeing many of you again next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
You too.